loosey-goosey is. Okay. So we're having this in service today because it's important for all staff to understand the use of restraints and what constitutes a restraint. And so we want to make sure that everybody that works at Uncas and Franklin understand what constitutes a restraint and how to possibly appropriately use restraints. We won't get into the actual how to restrain a client with this training. You will be going through CPI training. So that once you go through CPI training, know that it's great that you have this training, but we do try to limit the amount of hands-on with our clients, that it is always best to try to de-escalate the situation, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, versus using hands-on for our clients. So I'm going to share my screen with you. So one of the reasons that we are having this in service is because of the fact that at the last survey, it was noted that we had removed the window cranks from the windows so that clients could not escape through the windows. And that is actually considered a restraint or a violation of their client rights. And so our policy, and we're going to get to the policy, states that every client should be treated as an adult with dignity, respect, and individuality in a home-like environment. In the absence of a documented treatment plan based on clinical or therapeutic indications, no restriction on a resident's freedom will be arbitrarily imposed. And we're going to talk in a little bit about response. Any restrictive measures should be supported by a comprehensive assessment and documented in the resident's individual service plan. And that
wait down some more.
Okay, so and that falls on Ashley, so that you don't need to do a plan and determine if a client should be restrained or not. So absence of an emergency, we should not be restraining clients that don't have that as part of their treatment plan or service plan. So if you want to implement restraints or some type of restraint program, then that has to be approved by the department, DHS, for use of a restraint. So you need to, in addition to this training, before you would restrain a client or put hands on a client, you would have to attend CPI training, which will be offered to you, so that you understand when you should be using restraints, how to use restraints, because we all know from incidents like George Floyd and others that have been in the news over the past couple of years that there are dangers to restraining an individual. So you need to know how, and you need to know how long you can restrain an individual safely. And so anytime a restraint is used or a restrictive measure is used, then an incident report needs to be done so that Ashley can follow up and make sure that it was used appropriately and that there was no harm to the individual. When she redoes her care plan, if she determines that the client is no longer at risk, then it would be on her to delete that from the care plan. So now I'm going to go to the actual policy and procedure. Oh. This is the policy and procedure manual that is written to satisfy all the regulations that we are under. And so we're just going to highlight a couple of the parts of this policy and procedure. So first of all is section 21 is restraints. So our residents have a right to be free from physical restraints or psychoactive drugs, because giving a person a PRN medication because you're tired of dealing with them would be a chemical restraint. Or a psychoactive drug administered for the purpose of discipline or convenience and not required to treat the resident's medical symptoms. Notwithstanding the foregoing, restraints may be used on a resident, but only if prior approved for that resident by the Division of Quality Assurance pursuant or in the case of emergency. So we can use restraints. It's not what we would really like to do. And there is always a danger to yourself and to our clients if you put your hands on our clients. So emergency planning for certain clients. So there may be an incident when your clients say there's a fire drill, or say that in the middle of the night there truly is an emergency. You have to do whatever is necessary to remove that client from a burning building. So our company has taken into consideration clients who may refuse to follow prescribed evacuation procedures in a timely manner in response to an emergency. DHS 3332 provides broad rights to residents of CBRFs. In particular, DHS 8332 provides that residents shall be free from physical restraint except upon prior review and approval by the department, upon written authorization from the resident's primary physician or advanced practice nurse practitioner as defined in N8.02. The department may place conditions on the use of restraint to protect the health, safety, and welfare and rights of the resident. Notwithstanding the foregoing, there is ample case law across the nation pertaining to allowing certain actions, such as mandatory evacuations during an emergency or disaster. Accordingly, staff may, in a reasonable manner, remove to a safe area any persons who refuse to evacuate voluntarily. Seclusion, to be free from seclusion, meaning your separation by staff from others, except by permitted by law to protect the health, safety, or welfare of yourself or others. To be free from all chemical restraints, meaning drugs that does not treat medical symptoms. To be free from physical restraints, except upon prior review and approval by the Wisconsin Department of Health Services and upon written authorization from your primary care doctor. Yes. Here it is. Physical, so physical or chemical restraints of any kind shall never be used at our facilities. So we're never going to tie somebody down to a bed. And we do not give them PRN medication for which there is no indication. However, physical restraints may be used if pre-approved for a particular client by the Wisconsin Department of Quality Assurance or in case of an emergency. So that is our policy, so that you can say that you should be able to say when the state comes in that you know our policy regarding restraints. So can somebody tell me what constitutes a restraint? So say I have a client that is in a wheelchair and the client keeps wanting to ambulate, but she's really a huge ambulation risk. So we put her up to the table, we push her up to the table, we lock her wheelchair. Is that a restraint? Anybody? What do you think?
I'm sorry, can you come again, Deb?
Sure. So you have a client that shouldn't be up ambulating because he or she's a really high fall risk. So you put her in a wheelchair, push her up to the table, and lock the wheelchair. Is that a restraint?
Yes, it is a proper restraint though, correct?
Nope. It's still restrained. So you would have to get permission from DHS to use that as a strategy for one of your clients who might be a huge fall risk if they ambulate.
So to use a seatbelt with basically a seatbelt to prevent them from coming out the chair, it has to be in a treatment plan as well.
So it's really complicated. So what you would have to do is, if you use a seatbelt to restrain a client in their wheelchair, the answer would be, it would be not allowed. But say you use a seatbelt because a client would always lean forward and fall out of their wheelchair, but were they wanting to get up out of their wheelchair, they could undo the seatbelt, then it wouldn't be a restraint. But you would have to document that really well, that that you're doing this because the client tends to lean over and fall out of the wheelchair, but the client is able to undo the belt when, if they wanted to get up and ambulate.
Gotcha.
Is having a bed or bed enabler on the client's bed a restraint? Those things you slide underneath the mattress.
Yes.
It is. However, if you can demonstrate that it is being used for mobility and that it would not keep a client in the bed, but they would still be able to get out of the bed, then you could get. So we were always in a catch-22 in the CVRF I worked at, because if we said it wasn't a restraint, we had to document really well that the client used it for mobility and that the client could get up and around that bed rail. We also have to, if you do have one of those, you do have to do some checks to make sure that there's no space between the mattress and the bed rail for the client to roll in there and get caught, because there were cases where clients fell between the mattress and the bed rail and suffocated. So yeah, we were in a catch-22 situation in the CBRF because a lot of our elderly people wanted those bed rails. And the state would say, well, if those conditions are met, that it's used for mobility, they can get out of the bed, it's not considered a restraint, we don't have to apply for a waiver. However, then they'd come in and survey and they'd say, well, we didn't document well enough, it's a restraint. So you have to be careful when you have, objects like that. The things that, my husband had a enabler to help him get out of bed, and I didn't think at all it was a restraint, but we do have to do those assessments. And Ashley, if you are unsure, we can always have occupational therapy come in to determine if it would be considered a restraint or not.
Okay.
So, it obviously is going to fall a little bit on your judgment, but if you're really not sure if the client can do it or not, then you could consider having occupational therapy come in and assessing them for med mobility or whatever else. Taking a client's cane would be, because the client, once again, is always up tooling around and you want them to sit down, you take their cane away so they can't get up, that would be a restraint. Isolating a client. So I know that COVID was difficult for all of us, and I know it was difficult to get your clients to stay in their room. So, but you can't tell a client that they have to stay in their room. You can't say you've been naughty, you have to go to your room, because that's a violation of a client's rights and could be considered a restraint. So, you can't, now, however, during COVID, I think we all got away with it because they could come out if they wore a mask. if they were COVID positive, they could come out of their room to eat, but they would eat after the rest of the clients ate, hopefully. But we did have a client who had a huge patch of impetigo on her upper lip. Impetigo is like a giant cold sore, and it looks kind of gross, I have to admit. But anyway, she had a huge patch of impetigo on her upper lip. And so the caregiver told her that she had to stay in her room. And she called me and complained to me. And the caregiver also called me and said it looks ugly, that she should be made to stay in her room. And the answer is that's a restraint and a violation of the client's rights to confine them to their room. So we have to make accommodations for things like that. So we just said, you know, she could come out. She chose to put a Band-Aid over it, which I don't know, I think it helped a little bit, but, you know, she chose to put a Band-Aid over it. So we have to be really mindful of what might constitute a restraint for our clients. We are going to be going through CPI. And so part of what CPI is going to teach you is, the first step is de-escalate. And I don't work at Uncas and Franklin, but I have seen at a lot of the facilities that sometimes how we say things are that we just add fuel, as staff members add fuel to the fire. Because we know, right? The clients don't know what's best for them. We know what's best for them. And so we sometimes add fuel to their fires, and then they start to get agitated. They start to ramp up. Whereas de-escalating the situation. If two clients are getting at it or going at it, then can you step between the two clients, ask one client to go to the room or go to another room, so that you know the person that seems to be the aggressor, the more agitated person, that you can sit down and calm that person down versus putting hands on. And CPI will teach you how to safely put hands on. And the reason we want to do that is because we don't want you to get injured. We don't want our client to get injured. We don't want our client to allege that you assaulted him. So pretty much in orientation, I tell all new orientees that you do not put hands on your client. Now, clearly, if you need to put hands on a client to protect yourself, you have to make sure that there was no other way. Could you go in the care office? Could you walk away from that client? Are they following you and threatening you? If you can get away from the client, if you can protect yourself by not putting hands on the client, and you put hands on the client, you hit the client, push the client, you could be charged with assault. So we want to teach you the right way to put hands on the client. And we want to if you see that clients are starting, because you have clients that have chronic mental illness and they go through periods where they're you're able to redirect them, but they may be starting to go through a period where they're harder to redirect. They're going after another client. Then you need to be letting Ashley and Daryl know that, so that if the use of a restraint, if the use of using some type of CPI restrictive measure is indicated, then that would be part of the care plan and agreed upon by their guardian and the client. If they're making their own decisions. So always, if you can get away from a client, if you can separate clients, if a client seems to be ramping up, it's okay to very calmly ask your other clients to go out of the room, to leave the room, or to go to their rooms if you feel that they need to be behind a closed door for a minute, so that you can hopefully de-escalate the client who's getting agitated. Perhaps call 911 to get some backup for yourself, because we don't want anybody to be in a situation, and very often when the police come, because they are an authority figure, because they tend to look authoritative. They will be somewhat, they may be more helpful in calming that client down than just you are. Anybody have any questions so far? Okay.
So one question that I have, just making sure, like whenever we or I am training some of the staff on restraining the client, I make sure to always mention keeping the floor out of it, meaning that, you know, not taking the client to the floor,
Right.
but when necessary, using a wall as your friend, if that's, you know, if that's usable. Is that okay? That's what I'm asking.
Right, because as long as say if that's a client who, you know, you want to identify hopefully early, that would be a good strategy to use when that client gets ramped up. And then Ashley would put it as part of the care plan. And that is I know that we did have that incident where you did that and the state came in and said, oh my gosh, you violated the client's rights and you did that. And then they found out it was part of the care plan. It was done appropriately. And then they said, fine, you covered all your bases. And I think that is the biggest thing, is that Ashley, you communicating with yours and Daryl communicating with your staff and your staff communicating changes in clients' behavior with you so that you can be proactive, so that we're suddenly not, we've seen a client become more agitated for longer periods of time and nobody is communicating that. So you guys have a very important, or the RAs have a very important role to play at Uncas and Franklin, because you are Ashley's and Daryl's eyes and ears. You know the clients, you should know the clients really well, and you should be the first people to identify changes in condition with your clients. So you play a really important role in making sure that your clients are safe, the other clients are safe, and staff is safe. And keeping in mind that, you know, we can only do so much with medication, that we are not going to be able to medicate away all of our client behaviors. It would be nice if there was a magic pill to make Miss Francis a little quieter, to you know, make our clients individuals that could be working out in the community or could be functioning in a community or in even less restrictive settings than Uncas and Franklin. But there is no magic pill like that. And every every medication that we give to our clients has a potential side effect. So we cannot medicate away every single behavior that your client is going to exhibit. So we have to, instead of relying on medicating our client and medicating away these behaviors, we also need to learn other ways, like redirection, getting them occupied doing something that they really like to do. In addition to the chemical, the psychotropic medication that we give them for the behaviors. And that's Daryl and Ashley are really good mentors. And so they can help you if you're having difficulties with your clients. Use them. They are excellent. I know Daryl's been through CPI training, and he, of course, his size helps a little bit with the clients, but I don't think I'd be as effective as Daryl is. But it's surprising, because if you have enough confidence in the training that you received, sometimes just even throwing your shoulders back and showing that you're in charge and you're there to help the client, that goes a long way. You don't always have to take them to the ground. You don't always have to put them up against a wall. Questions?
Yes, one more question. I don't want to take you too far, but so I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. So if it's not in a treatment plan that we can restrain them, we cannot restrain a client.
If it's an emergency, if you have a client that's got a knife and you don't put yourself at risk, or say they're going after a client with a knife, and your first thought is tackle them, get them to the ground. I'd be very careful about that, but you know, in an emergency situation like that, a client's going to run into the street in front of a car. You're probably going to want to, you know, try to get him down before he gets hit by that car. Those are emergency situations, and, you know, serious emergency situations where you could use some type of force, some type of maneuver where you would get them to the ground. But things like they're arguing with another client, even like, you know, being very careful, like if they're kicking another client, are they, yes, they are hurting that other client, they're violating that client's rights, but can we, without taking the client down, can we move the client, ask the client to leave the area? Or get another staff. You guys always usually have at least 2 staff members, or call the other staff member to come and get the client that's getting kicked in the leg and remove them from the scene and try to get the client that's doing the kicking settled down.
So I think you kind of answered my question, but so it's okay for us to ask the client to go to their room. Like, for example, like Andrew, sometimes when he has behaviors, he'll like start like humping the couch or something, which is obviously
Right.
inappropriate to do in front of people. So we'll say, hey, you know, can you please go to your room, or you need to go take a break in your room.
Yeah.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Okay.
But you can't, if the client says, I don't want to go to my room, I would not push him in his room and close the door.
Right. Okay.
I would try some, you know, if you're going to hump the couch, like maybe go over in this room here where there's no other clients and hump the chair there. But yeah, it's fine to say, you know, hey, it seems like you need a little time to be in your bedroom to think things through. Could you go to your bedroom? If they go, that's fine. And that, you know, that's great if they'll go. That's a great strategy, because you're not forcing them to go to their bedroom. You're just making a suggestion that they have, that they go to their bedroom if they want to engage in that activity. And that is one of the things that kind of an ooh moment that you don't want to think about. But if you have clients that want to have sex, then you know, you can stipulate that it can only be done when they're in the privacy of their bedroom. And you may think that's funny that we would think that we'd have to actually stipulate it, but you know, with the clients that I worked with dementia, they really didn't know what's an appropriate place to have sex. So they would potentially be groping each other in a common area. So if you want to engage in that behavior, you need to go to your room. Any other questions? So Ashley and Daryl, since you're on here, we will be, it's a 2-day, CPI is a 2-day course. So we're obviously going to have more than one session of CPI. So you can start thinking about, you know, who hasn't attended CPI, who needs to attend CPI. Obviously your lead caregivers should be one of the first people to attend CPI.
Is that a virtual training or a in-person training?
I think most of it is virtual, but
but it's like 8 hours or something.
it's like 2 days. So like the first day
Okay.
is, it can be virtual, and I think the second day is actually demonstrating holds.
Okay.
So, you know, that she would have to come to the facility to do, or she'd have to do it at corporate, I think.
Okay.
But I mean, working where you do, I mean, it would be nice if everybody could have that training. You know, and like I said, the first day is a lot about de-escalation. How do we talk to clients? What other strategies can we use? Getting them, redirecting them, getting them interested in something, versus, you know, having to them escalate to the point where we need to use restrictive measures on them. Any questions? Okay, so I see that Andres, are you taking the attendance, Ashley?
Yeah, I was gonna wait until the end just in case anybody else comes up.
Okay. And this will be available on YouTube. If you feel that you need another session via Zoom, let me know. But otherwise, tomorrow I will send you the link for this on YouTube. And if you know, if any questions come up, you know, ever come up, I'm more than happy as a client rights specialist to help you guys navigate some of this stuff. I don't have all the answers, but it is important that no matter whatever we do, that we treat the clients with dignity and respect, and that we do, you know, we're their advocates, and that we don't do anything, say anything, perform any actions that could be a violation of their right.
Is this the end of the training?
Yep.
Okay, who is under just iPhone on the, who's in the meeting? Anyone? I've got me, Deb, Patty, Antonio, Andre, Daryl, and then iPhone.
iPhone, you're muted. Speak up.
We need to know who you are, iPhone.
We want to give you credit for attending this class.
All right, well, if they don't, I'll try and figure out who it is.
Thanks, Deb. Thanks, Ashley. Thanks, Daryl. Thanks,
Yep.
Antonio.
Thanks, iPhone.
Andre. Thanks, iPhone.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah.